what's up my broke budget guys, gals, and ninjas? Today we're going to talk about whether or not you should have an emergency fund or if you should pay off debt. So the question is whether or not you should have an emergency fund or pay off debt. Now, I don't like that question because I believe you should do both. But the question is then, what order do you do them in? So I first want to start off with an emergency fund because accidents happen, especially when you're still trying to pay off debt. You want to have yourself covered so that you don't go into more debt while you're trying to pay off debt. Makes sense, right? So in order to do that, what we need to do is we need to have a starter emergency fund. Now, you don't want to waste all your time trying to get up an emergency fund while your debt is still building interest. That's not what we're trying for here, and that's why we have a starter emergency fund. Now, some people will recommend $1,000 in your starter emergency fund, others will recommend more. Personally, I recommend $2,000 to $3,000 in your starter emergency fund because I often see that emergencies happen at more than $1,000 most of the time. A car breaks down, it could be more than $1,000 to fix. But if your tire pops, that's not going to cost you $1,000. But you never know what's going to happen in life. It's a medical bill. Normally it's over $1,000. So that's why I recommend $2,000, $3,000 in a starter emergency fund before you start paying off debt. And then as soon as you have that starter emergency fund, then you focus on paying off as much debt as you can. And if at any point during the debt payoff you have to pull money out of your emergency fund, then I recommend pausing attacking the debt and just pay minimums on the debt while you finish rebuilding up to that $2,000, $3,000, whatever you choose for your lifestyle. And the reason why I recommend that is just so that you have enough to cover your bases while you're still continuing to pay off debt. And then once you're done paying down debt and everything's paid off, maybe not your house, but like everything else is paid off, then what I recommend is building that emergency fund. And I suggest 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. For me personally, I want to feel covered, and with uncertainty in the future and all this stuff, I would prefer to have 6 months for myself, but that really is up to you. So then that way you know you're covered for your base expenses. And your base expenses, what are they? They are things like your heating for your house bill in general, your water bill, all that kind of stuff, and food. Don't forget food, because food is delicious and wonderful, and you must not forget food. Then once we figure that out, that's how much our emergency fund should be saving. So, and you'll times that by however many months you want to do. So basically, if I add everything up in my budget and I find out that I live off of $2,000 for my bare necessities, well, if that's the case, then I will basically take that and say, all right, well, $2,000 covers me for 1 month. What do I need to cover for 3 months? And I times that by 3 and I get $6,000. So that's $6,000 that should sit in an account that is accessible. Not necessarily an account that's like out there making money, not a CD, nothing like that, because you need to have access to this money when an emergency happens. So you'll sit it in a separate bank account from your regular bank account. That way you don't touch that money unless you absolutely need to. But then I would have like a debit card or something connected to that bank account so that if an emergency happens and I have to go to the hospital or something, I can just use the debit card to pay for that. But I don't want it to be too accessible, so oftentimes I'll take that debit card and I'll put it in my safe at home instead of in my wallet, because normally you'll have the ability to run home or have somebody run home and grab it for you. Now, there's other situations. If a car breaks down, maybe you do want to have it in your wallet if you don't have enough in your bank account that could cover it. So it really is up to you and how disciplined you are. That's really what it comes down to, is how disciplined you are in your finances. If you can agree not to touch this unless it's an emergency, then you can keep it in your wallet. There's no problem with that. In fact, that's probably a safer idea, just because then if you're out and your car does break down, you can pay for it right away right there without having to have somebody come back and forth. You always want to make sure you have an emergency fund in place. Whether you're paying off debt or not, you want an emergency fund because stuff happens. No matter when it's going to happen, it's going to happen during your lifetime, and it's going to happen multiple times during your lifetime. I suggest $2,000 $2,000, $3,000 to start your emergency fund and then start paying off debt, and then as soon as your debt is paid off, then you bump that up to the 3 to 6 months, whatever you feel comfortable with. Some people even go as far as having a year worth of expenses because they feel like it'll take them a long time to recover from an illness or from a job loss or stuff like that. And that's really what it's for. It's for stuff like that happens, or if your car accidentally breaks down. It's not like regular maintenance or anything. We're talking about it breaking down unexpectedly. If you're in a really high cost living area, you can go up to like $5,000, and that would be fine to have before you start paying off debt. But definitely focus on one thing at a time, because if you're trying to have your money go multiple directions, you won't see very much progress on anything. Like, you'll see a tiny bit of progress, but it's not going to go very far very fast. So it's much easier to focus on one at a time. And of course, debt, you always pay the minimum while you're saving up an emergency fund, and then once your emergency fund's saved, then you pay as much as you possibly can towards debt, and you stop saving for temporarily until you can get to the end of the debt payoff, which could take many years. So if you feel like you need a bigger emergency fund, that works too. It just depends on your financial situation. If you would like to leave me a comment down below if you have any questions about what your finances will look like, if you really need help figuring this out. So be sure to hit like on this video and subscribe for more content in the future. God loves you, I love you, and stay ninjalicious.